Sure. Well, I think you agree with me that preserving the land and preserving a family farm like Penn-Buck Farm is an ongoing effort. It involves many players, municipal governments, the state government, local landowners, and one of the guys that makes sure the ingredients all come together and form this recipe of land preservation is Mike Frank, who's with the Heritage Conservancy as well. Mike, you've got a broad portfolio, both in terms of the geography you need to cover and the kind of things you work on, and I guess perhaps it would be described as you sort of work on the front end of this process to get to a point where we can move a farm into preservation. So why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about a day in the life of Mike Frank?
Oh boy. Well, it starts very, very early. My work is mostly with municipal officials. We do a variety of things at Heritage Conservancy to help municipal officials and the people that they work with, their boards and commissions, do a better job of land conservation within their communities. I believe Laura said that all the communities are different. They all have different needs, they all have different goals and aspirations, and we work with them to help them achieve them. The two primary things that the community planning staff at Heritage Conservancy does is help municipalities prepare open space plans. We also do river conservation plans, other types of plans to protect natural and historic features. A big part of our work, though, is also assisting municipalities prepare for an open space referendum at the local level. I believe you and Laura talked about money at the state level. There's some federal money that comes into it. But in the equation to make these things happen, preserve this beautiful farm, a key component is the municipal officials need to ask their voters to say yes to open space farming.
And Mike, I'm going from memory now, but it seems to me, at least in this part of Pennsylvania, which is highly suburbanized, eastern Pennsylvania, there have been numerous referendums, and generally speaking, they pass. In fact, I'm struggling to think of one that hasn't passed in recent memory.
Very few fail, and maybe there's some specific reasons, but there is overwhelming support for raising money at the local level of government to protect the most important lands in a municipality such as this farm here.
How important is to have the wording of the referendum make sense?
Well, it's very important. And people really have a right to know what they're voting on. So prior to even getting that wording in the referendum, for municipal officials to hold public forums, to discuss with their constituents, their taxpayers, what type of money they're talking about, where it would be spent, what they intend to achieve with that type of thing. So the wording is important, and the outreach and education are very critical.
How long have you worked for the Conservancy?
For about 9.5 years.
And what is your background?
Well, I have an undergraduate degree in business administration from Penn State. I worked in business for a while, and you know the livelihood was good, but it didn't do something in here. So I always had a real interest in architecture and the state of cities and communities. So I went back to Penn State and got a master's degree in regional planning.
That's outstanding.
From there, I went to the Bucks County Planning Commission, worked with the commission for almost 14 years. Started my own practice for 11 years. I worked on my own for municipalities, not for developers. I just worked the municipal side of things. And again, for the last 9+ years, I worked with Heritage Conservancy.
You've obviously touched a lot of municipal governments from the upper Bucks part of Bucks County, where we are today, down towards the city of Philadelphia. Yes. What has been your most challenging case? We're looking at this from a case study.
Oh, boy. They all have their interesting twists and turns. Again, each community is different. I do an awful lot of expert witness testimony to support municipalities and their zoning, their planning, their conservation efforts. And being in front of a bunch of attorneys who are trying to take me apart I think is the most challenging aspect of my career.
Well, not that we have a bias against attorneys, but obviously you can tell Mike and I are not, so that happens from time to time in my profession as well. We asked the question earlier because the Heritage Conservancy has 50 years of just rich history and meeting William Penn's, I think, grand design for a commonwealth that flourishes not only economically but environmentally as well. If I could ask you to look into your crystal ball, what do you see in the next 10, 15, 20 years, particularly in this part of Bucks County, and some things that we ought to continue to put in the forefront as we work together?
Yeah, I have worked with municipalities, again, from Bristol Borough in the lower end, right on the Delaware, right near Philadelphia, to Durham and Springfield Townships. I've written comprehensive plans for these two communities, written zoning ordinances for them in years past. As we look at just the progression of development, it's at the doorstep for the Upper Bucks area. And to make a commitment to preserve the important lands, it's now or never. We can't talk about it for 10 years or think about it or delay it. I mean, now is the time to really move ahead to protect the important pieces. Certainly have to prepare for some level of growth, but the resources that we see here, this beautiful farm, the hills, I mean, they will go, and they will go quickly if we don't take assertive action to protect the best.
Well, and Mike, you just laid out the challenge, I think, for all of us that have a passion for our communities and for land conservation and the environment, but also with the economic welfare and the economic vitality of this region. And we want to always strike the proper balance. We want to make sure that Paradise isn't paved over into a parking lot. And I can't thank you and your team at the Heritage Conservancy for all that you do on behalf of so many in our community, and particularly for spending time with us today. As always, if you have comments or would like more information about this subject or anything else I'm working on as your state senator, please don't hesitate to contact me. The contact information will roll at the conclusion of our time together today. And I do want to thank you for watching this month's edition of Community Report. Until we meet again, I'm your state senator, Rob Wonderling.